Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Woodburn Accountants and Advisors China webinar on your China roadmap. The China roadmap is my signature system. It's a system that I've developed. It's a generic system, which I've been asked a lot about in recent days. It is a generic system that has to be tailor-made to your journey that you're going to incur when you start transacting or when you start incorporating an entity. I'm going to be going through the 3 milestones that one has to achieve, and to spice it up a little bit, I call them the 9 superpowers that you've got to earn in order to be able to progress efficiently in China and to accelerate your growth. The focus on today's presentation will really be on focusing on your growth in the Chinese market. But if you've been to my webinars before, this is usually how I start my webinars, and there are actually quite a few new names on today's series that I'm not familiar with, so I'd love to know who you are. Now, there's a small number of you, so I will call you out. It's not my big numbers that I normally get on the end of the month webinar series. So do let me know who you are, because the whole point of this webinar in particular is that you interact with me. My goal in the next 80 to 90 minutes is that you have a very rough draft of bullet point actions that you need to take coming out of this webinar in order to start and begin your journey. And obviously I can help you with all of those points, but I'm not going to be the one putting pen to paper, okay? It's your business, it's your idea, it's your innovation. I'm here just to support and help you along that journey and make sure that you avoid the roadblocks. So if you're a newbie to China, newbies to China are basically those of you that have found an opportunity, you see the potential that's in the Chinese market, and you're on here to gain a certain level of education in order to understand how to protect your business, how to begin, what solutions or options are available to you that might minimize risk and commitment. So if you're a newbie to China, type in newbie into the chat section of the control panel. If you are a startup in China, then generally it's those of you that have been transacting in the Chinese market or have actually had an implementation, for example, a company that's been set up in China for a period of about 1 to 3 years, okay? And if you're in that category, then type in startup. If you're an experienced China hand, which I do generally get, I don't know how many of you might be on here that are experienced China hands, but experienced China hands are usually those of you like myself that have been in China 10, 15, 20 years, and you're just looking to get an understanding of, you know, what people are doing now. I mean, regulations change consistently. It's always good to have fresh ideas and fresh tips on how to continue your growth in the market. Again, I'm going to use this word a lot in today's presentation. So Martin is a newbie, Claire's a newbie, Gal is a startup. Apologies if I've mispronounced your names. So fantastic. So it's already great for me to understand where you guys are at in terms of the newbies and startups, so I can give you a bit more direction with today's presentation. How the presentation works is I educate you. I'm going to educate you on my signature system, which is this China roadmap methodology. I've got right now about 17 of you on the line. I've got about 14 registrants, so it's a small crowd today, right? So use this opportunity. I'm going to be staying on the line to answer any and all of your questions during the Q&A. Use this opportunity wisely. And again, I can completely understand if there's a confidentiality issue in terms of your business, you know, I can also have a direct conversation with you after the webinar. Don't worry about that. But use this time wisely. If you've got questions, jot them down, add them into the questions section. If you've got comments, do that as well. I'm going to be explaining a lot of case studies because I feel that case studies are invaluable in making people understand what not to do in the Chinese market, basically. So this is all about education, all right? On a technical note, you know, I know it's been COVID times and whatnot, and everyone is still kind of working remotely. You might not have the necessary bandwidth in your home, which is also why I don't have the webcam on. I don't own GoToWebinar though. So cross fingers, I don't have technical issues, but if I do have technical issues, it takes about 30 seconds to 1 minute for me to reboot, and then I'm back on and I will finish today's presentation. If you are having issues on your end, I can't help you as I'm presenting. And I don't have anybody else from my team that is on here with me. We're tight on resources ourselves. So if you run into issues, just keep in the back of your mind, I am recording this. You'll get a copy of the recording and you'll also get a copy of the presentation. And again, we can always jump on a call to talk about your specific case as well. All right, so don't hesitate on that at all. Who am I? Well, my name is Christina Kohler-Coluccia. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. Why am I able to help you? Well, I've got 17 years of experience in China. First of all, I've got a personal experience where I set up our subsidiary in Shanghai 17 years ago. I've got a lot of personal experiences of mistakes that I made upon my entry in 2003. That my brother and father also made because we're a family business. And then I also have obstacles and roadblocks that my clients had during the last 17 years as well, all in the realm of corporate services and compliance in China. So everything from pre-investment advisory, finding the right location, how much capital do I need, all the way down to implementing the structure, finding the right people, having trouble with certain employees, all the way down to trademarks being hijacked, and that's a personal experience that I had, all the way to not having operational guidelines, system processes in place to be able to analyze the business in China. And that is what is the key, is that you are going to be incorporating a structure, whether that's direct from your home jurisdiction, from your head office, or whether it's an actual entity on the ground. And the goal is that you have the ability to analyze what is actually happening on the ground, even if you're not based on the ground there in China, so that decisions can be made quickly and that you can then focus on strategy and growth, okay? And that's the whole point of this China roadmap methodology. Before I want to begin today's session, I just want to let you know that we do have the October, well, it's going to be November because I need a bit of a break on speaking. We've got the October webinar series, which will be in the first week of November, all about what you need to know about investing in the Chinese market. So everything from setting up a company, calculating your capital, choosing the right place, appointing people in the structure, and opening a corporate bank account. So if you want to join those, you can. It's up on the website, woodburnglobal.com/events. All right, so I just wanted to highlight that. And at the end today, I will also highlight about our WeChat community, which has also just been recently set up, where if you have a WeChat account, I do encourage you to join into our community, which is a great place to get to know other people that are already in the market, or people that are also looking to go into the market. So let's get started with today's presentation. So again, we need this to be interactive, all right? So we're going to be talking about your China roadmap. I have created a generic roadmap system that has to be tailor-made to you, okay? So the China roadmap, all right, has 3 milestones that are on the left, which are milestone number 1 is opportunity, milestone number 2 is the implementation, and milestone 3 is focusing on growth, okay? In order to achieve each of those milestones, we need to achieve superpowers, okay? If you don't achieve these superpowers, you're not going to be able to progress in the market. And I'm very strict about this, okay? Because I will share lately the conversations I've been having, okay? Which, you know, I don't want to criticize anybody, but you guys have to realize if you want to go into China, you are going to have to spend time, resources, and some type of financial capability or resource has to also be available. If you don't have that, then don't go to the Chinese market. You will fail. So the first question you have to ask yourself before you even start this China roadmap is, do I have time to put into this? Do I have resources? Not financial, I'm talking about time, team, other people within your organization that can aid you, that can act as a resource. And number 3, do you have certain financial capabilities? And if you do have financial capabilities, what is that amount? Okay. If you don't ask yourself that, and the answer to that, all those questions is, well, actually, I've got no financial resources and I don't have time, please don't start this journey. Okay, you will fail. If you do it pardon my language, half-assed, it's not going to work. Okay, I'm going to be blunt and brutal. It's not going to work. So we're going to look at these 3 milestones and we're going to look at these 9 superpowers. So, oops, I'm pressing too quickly. So what we're going to look at is, what are the problems if you don't follow the roadmap? And I'm going to start off with today's presentation with case studies. The first is, research is creating new knowledge. Okay, I cannot reiterate this more. If you don't have data at your fingertips, there's no point in you going into China, because without data and education, you're not going to know what channel strategies exist, and you're not going to know what next steps to take. Without the data points, you're not going to know how to maybe change your product. Now, I have one client who's been joining my webinar series who I've been so impressed with the conversations I've been having with him, because actually I'm at a stage I can't help him because he's in the research phase. And what he is doing is he's doing his own market research, outsourcing it externally. The result of that research found that the packaging that they have today is unsuitable for the Chinese market. So they're redesigning the packaging, and they will then, once doing that, do another focus group test to see if that has improved anything. If that goes well, they're going to put pen to paper and create a strategy and a business plan. Okay, but without research and creating new knowledge, you have no idea what steps to take. And the goal is to understand what type of research and what type of data do you need now to make a decision on how to move forward. Okay. One big case study that if you've joined my webinars before, you might have heard, is that I had an Austrian candy company approach me in Shanghai. This was a number of years ago, probably around 2006, 2007. And they had come to Shanghai for one of the food and beverage trade shows. I think it was Cial at the time. So it would have been around May. And they didn't have a booth at the trade show. They were there actually to network, meet people, meet distributors, etc. But what was outstanding for me was the fact that they already had a 20-foot container on the water on the way to China. Without realizing that in the food and beverage sector, they needed to go through quarantine inspections, labeling. They had no distributor, so they actually had no consignee for the goods. It was going into a bonded zone, going straight into the warehouse of the logistics provider. They were at a trade show, and they made the assumption that they would get orders at the trade show. Okay? You cannot make assumptions in China. You've got to know facts. Okay? Don't put a shipment on the water if you don't have somebody to receive the goods, right? Now, this might all seem like common sense to you now that I'm saying it. But for this Austrian company, they really thought that they were prepared. They had catalogs, brochures. They were ready to bombard the trade show. And at the end of the trade show, nothing came in because they also didn't have a booth. Okay? They had no way of displaying their products or having tastings. They had none of this. All right? But they had really thought that they had been prepared. And it's completely understandable. You don't know what you don't know, okay? But that's why you've got to increase your network and your ecosystem, and that's also why you're on today's presentation, to understand what your action plan should be. What steps do you have to next take? Another case study I have is regarding a German lock company. That's why I put the photo of the lock, where here the title is Keep Control of Your Most Important Assets. So they arrived in the Chinese market about 20 years ago. And what happened with them is they found a distributor. They never had signed exclusivity with them, but they found a distributor. They worked super well, fantastic relationship. Until, a couple of years ago, they said, well, we can actually do this by ourselves. Why don't we take the distributor out, right? We'll earn more, we'll have an entity in China, and we'll go straight into the market. As they started having discussions with the distributor about canceling it, and there was going to be a 2-year wheedling out of the contract. It wasn't going to happen overnight, right? It was a very, very decent exit from the market. And in the end, the distributor said, well, you do remember that I have registered your trademark in China. So if you're looking to sell, well, you're going to have to owe me a continual licensing fee because I registered the mark. And they'd completely forgotten about this. Okay, and it was a leverage point that the distributor had. But the company 20 years ago had said, you as a distributor, we can see a long-term relationship. Why don't you register the trademark? You have then direct access to the market. You're doing the wholesale distribution. And it worked perfectly until the point that they wanted their asset, their brand back. So you've got to keep control of your most important assets, because you might have a plan today that will change very quickly in 5 years and will change again very quickly in 10 years. So you've got to make a list of what are the most important assets that you own, and are you willing to relinquish them to distributors, to clients, to whomever. You've got to have the proper documentation in place if you want to do that. You've got to have the exit clauses. You've got to keep all of that in mind, and that will be portrayed in today's roadmap. Oops. The next case study is, again, preemption by action is the best protection. Now, again, you don't know what you don't know, all right? Now, I have met a lot of companies who make the assumption that if they're not selling into the Chinese market, there is no need for them to register their trademark because they're not doing any branding activities. Well, this is a wrong assumption to have. This was, again, a client of mine. It's a global brand that was purely manufacturing with third parties in China. And they had, oh my God, I don't even know the exact number, but it was between 80 to 100 manufacturers. It was a consumer brand, so they were producing a variety of consumer products. And it was completely 100% export. They had a falling out with one of their suppliers. One of the suppliers lost face, and as a revenge tactic, registered their brand in China. As a consequence of this, at one point when there were export shipments, the suppliers were roadblocked by the customs authorities because that supplier had registered their trademark, but not just with the trademark office, also with the Customs Bureau. And as a result of that, any export with the product brand name on it, whether it's on the carton, on the product itself, could not be exported because my client didn't have the authority to export the brand. He didn't own the brand in China. This went into a court case that lasted around 3 to 4 months, so it was relatively quick because it was easy to prove that it had been done in bad faith, this trademark registration. But again, it was 3 to 4 months where they had to pivot and find a solution on how to export. So on the products that didn't have the actual brand on the product, they used plain cartons, like you can see here in the slide. They used plain cartons and they then sent those items out. But for anything else that had the actual brand on it, it was stuck. So again, I'm going to use bad language, but don't do things half-assed. You've got to understand that when you're registering your trademark, if you are in a product category, register it also at the Customs Bureau. Another company, this was a joint venture case study, right? Pay attention to everything and the truth will reveal itself. If you don't pay attention, you know nothing. And let's say that phrase again. If you don't know something, you don't know something, right? So in this situation, it was a joint venture with an Australian company and a Chinese individual. They had a production facility in northern China. After 3 years, I had nothing to do with the organization of that structure. I was contacted 3 years after the establishment from the Australian party because they said, you know, we're not profitable. We don't understand why. There's a lot of production, and you know, we just want to understand why and what's going on, and can there be something that can be improved? Can the efficiency be improved, etc. So one thing that I asked from them, which is just it's pre-documentation we require in order to prepare ourselves for the actual audit, was can we see your financial management reports and audit report? And we asked the Australian company to provide it to us. They provided it to us, and we found it was only in Chinese language. And when I said to them, but you have English versions of this, right? And they said no. And then I obviously answered back and said, do you mean for 3 years you have not been able to read your financial management reports? And they said yes. And every time that they asked the office to provide it, they never did. And I said, well, how much would it cost you to take these P&Ls and balance sheets and cash flow statements to a translator and get them translated? It would have been less than 100 Australian dollars. But it never came to their mind to do that. If you don't pay attention to your business, if you don't have the most vital documentation to have a review of the status, the health of your company, obviously you're not profitable, right? You've got to understand, and again, things are very common sense in China. If you are a foreign invested company, your requirement will be to your team or to your outsourced provider or whomever that you want bilingual reports. It obviously makes sense that Chinese reports will be submitted to the government authorities. It does not mean that they can't be translated or put bilingually so that you have a bilingual P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow statement, or even a trial balance. Okay, the first area where you have a red flag is the fact that you can't even read your management reports. That's already a bad sign in the company. But lo and behold, because they weren't paying attention, what did we find? We found that the joint venture partner through the Chinese company was transferring same amount every month to an individual. We couldn't find this individual on the payroll, and we did a bit of background check, and we found that this person was actually the joint venture partner's brother, and he was getting close to 50,000 RMB, so 5,000 euros every month out for no reason. He did nothing in the company. We think it was a type of repatriation strategy for him to get money out. All right. So this was the first thing that was revealed to ourselves. The second thing that we found out was actually that the trademark had been registered by the Chinese joint venture entity. Okay, so when they decided to go through a divorce, obviously there was a huge discussion about the trademark, who owns the trademark in China, etc., and there had to be another payout. It was a very bad experience for this Australian company who said, you know, they became so negative on China and the people in China. But quite frankly, they only had themselves to blame because they never asked or even got themselves translated the financial management reports where their own CFO could have found this out or raised questions at least. And they waited 3 years for this to happen. Okay, so you've got to pay attention to your business, which is why, again, I reflect back on the thing that I said at the beginning, which is, do you have time? Do you have the resources, and do you have the financial capability to sustain whatever you want to do in China? And if the answer is no, then you don't go in. Okay, so you've got to pay attention. The whole point of developing this China roadmap methodology was really for me to highlight to individuals that somehow when they get into China, they lose common sense. Okay, I don't know if it's because of the language barrier, the culture barrier, because it's so far away, because it's different time zones. I don't know why, but trust me, almost everybody that I meet somehow loses their common sense when doing business in China. When you're doing such an international expansion, okay, my goal for everybody is that you can sleep at night. Trust me, in my 17 years, even though I'm on the ground in China, there have been days where I have not slept because I didn't have transparency. I didn't have the information and I didn't have the data points. The minute that I had that, I slept like a baby because I knew where my company was. I knew the health status of my organization. So the whole point of today is that we are going to try and overcome the barriers, the roadblocks that will come when you are starting your business in China, okay? We want to create a solid and flexible strategy. We want to have complete transparency. We want to have a phased growth strategy, okay? Where today you're going to do X, tomorrow you're going to do X and Y, and in 5 years you're going to do X, Y, and Z, okay? You're not going to do everything from day one. You won't have the financial resources to do that. We want to create a journey for you where you are able to detect the warning signs. You're able to recognize that things are not going well, and you can make a decision immediately to fix them, okay, with solutions that are being offered to you. You want to have financial data that you can read, that you can understand, that you can analyze. And ultimately, you want to be able to have an organization in China, whether that is from your head office or with an entity on the ground, where you can focus on growth and you can accelerate the growth because there is complete transparency within your organization. The 5 biggest problems that lead to companies to overspend in China is lack of communication. And there's so many silly reasons for this, whether it's time zone, whether it's because they can't connect on WeChat. I hear thousands of excuses, okay? It's laziness, ultimately, if you can't communicate with your staff, or you have the wrong staff on the ground who just are not communicating with you. But then you gotta let them go. Or if you're turning a blind eye. If you're saying, okay, I got a feeling, I've got a gut feeling that something is not going right, and you're like, well, you know, I'm in the UK, I'm in the US, I'm in Australia, what can I really do? You can do a lot, all right? You can react very quickly. If you get into ethical situations, now the favorite saying used to be, oh, well, this is China, you know, this is what you do here. No, we're in 2020, people. I mean, China is China. It's a mature nation, especially if you go to cities like Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Tianjin. You go to these big cities, they are mature cities now. Okay, agreed. If you go into the tier 2, even tier 2, I find quite mature. Tier 3, tier 4 cities, yeah, you might get into ethical situations because of the government officials that are there. But in the bigger cities, no reason for you to get into any situation like that. Another thing is staff. Staff are critical. You are currently not on the ground in China, and we don't know when China will open where people can actually go to China and be on the ground, okay? Getting visas are difficult and lengthy, and some people are just currently with COVID not willing to travel. So you will need to have a foot on the ground. And the question will be, do you hire somebody or do you outsource? There are pros and cons to both, okay? The issue is whether you're outsourcing or whether you're hiring individuals, don't hire inexperienced and cheap people just because it's cheap and you've got limited resources. And don't hire inexperienced and expensive people because, again, why waste money on that, okay? You want to have staff that are the right fit for your organization. In the startup phase are flexible, where they do multiple job responsibilities that might not be their expertise, but they're willing to learn, and they communicate really, really well with you and with a level of transparency. And the last point is having no data at your fingertips to create your business plan, strategy, or budget to fall back on, okay? And I just want to highlight something here because I'm getting this a lot on conversations I'm having with companies. I have a very broad network and ecosystem myself that I've developed over the last 17 years. And I am thrilled to be able to pass on my contacts. I've had several people receive contact names and websites of market research firms, as well as marketing digital agencies. And some people have even been brash enough to reply to me and say, oh, Christina, we looked at the website. You know what? They're too expensive for us. If you're making that assumption based on just looking at someone's website, China's not right for you, okay? If you're talking to a research company or a digital marketing agency, I would hope their website looks expensive, okay? You've got to talk to people. If you don't pick up the phone and actually have a conversation with somebody, that is, first of all, a way for you to educate yourself and gain research. And it's a free conversation. And anybody who's doing business in China is happy to talk about China, okay? Second of all, don't make the assumption that someone is expensive. You've got no idea until you've got a proposal at your fingertips, all right? And those proposals might surprise you, right? So please, when you are being referred to someone, don't make assumptions by the name, by their LinkedIn profile, by their website. Talk to them. You will learn a lot from that first conversation, okay? Then you get a proposal, and then you compare. Don't make assumptions. We don't go into China making assumptions. We need facts, figures, and data, all right? And you can't develop a relationship with anyone if you don't have somebody on the phone to talk to. So having WeChat is a huge advantage, but it's not an excuse. You can also connect to people in China with Teams meetings, with Zoom, and GoToMeeting. I do it on a daily basis. All right, so no excuses on that point. So what is the solution? Now the solution is to get on this China roadmap. I hope you've got your pen and paper and you're ready to take notes on what your next action plans are going to be. Now the first milestone is opportunity. The whole point of opportunity is understanding, this is really for the newbies, is understanding whether one, there is an opportunity in China for you, and two, what would be the return on investment on that opportunity, and how are you able to evaluate that opportunity. It's all about awareness, okay? So let's go through these three superpowers. The first is education. Knowledge is power, okay? You've got to continuously educate yourselves about the sector that you're in, about research that you're doing, and generally about the climate in China. And you can't do that unless you're talking to people. You have to build a knowledge base. And there's 1,000 ways of going about doing that. One key aspect I want you all to remember is that knowledge is power, and it is the leverage that you will have to be able to negotiate in the Chinese market. Okay? How are you going to get that education? You are going to get that education through free information. This webinar is free, it's complimentary. All of my webinar series are free and complimentary. And I have guest speakers that pop on and share their advice and their knowledge level. You can get information from lawyers, from corporate service providers, from chambers of commerce, from China country associations, from the European SME Center. I mean, I've just listed 5 here, and it is all free information. The EU SME Center even has market research reports that they sell for under 50 euros. In some instances, if it's a bigger report, it might be under 100, but never more than 100 euros. Okay, go on their websites. A lot of this stuff is also free. If you're from the UK, you've got the China-Britain Business Council. Thousands of information, business advisors that are there on the ground in your own country, networking events, webinars. I don't know if they've started live events. I don't think so, not yet anyway, but they're planning to. Or in Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, you've got chambers of commerce. If you're from the UK, you've got the British Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, the British Chamber of Commerce in Beijing. It costs you nothing to pop onto their website and get their mailing lists and get information. I've got thousands of competitors. Reach out to some of them. Log on to their newsletters. It's all about how to gain education, and we're all on a tight budget. This is how you get free info. Okay? So I hope this is an action plan for you. I would love to know that you guys are going to reach out, I don't know, by tomorrow to 5 websites and subscribe yourselves to the free mailing list and get info. Even if you don't have time to read it, save those articles. Even if you have no time to join webinars, subscribe so that you can get the recordings and listen to it when you're free. Okay? Information and education is invaluable. The second superpower is research. Now listen to me. This is vital. I actually rarely speak to a client unless they have this, all right? Because from my perspective, there is no point in you going into China if you do not have data at your fingertips. To be quite frank, I wouldn't know how you would be able to build a business plan without data, okay? And know what then your action plan will be to move forward in the market. There are a variety of research studies you can do. You do not have to do all of this. But if I do get a client who's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to set up an entity in China. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Where? Oh, I don't know. I thought you were going to tell me where I should be. No, where are your clients? Where are your suppliers? Where do you need to be? Okay, nobody can make that decision for you unless you've got data points. All right. Then I've got consumer brands coming and saying, yeah, you know, we want to be in China because we're getting some people, some Chinese coming on our website in the UK and the US, and they're buying things. So, you know, we want to go to China and we want to, I'm like, okay, you know, how much is that volume of business? What's the value of that business? Have you done a brand awareness study to understand what is the volume of people who know you? Because if you haven't done that yet, then don't be disappointed if you set up shop in China and nobody buys your product because they don't even know who you are. And when people start doing these research studies, they will realize that the people that are buying on their websites in the UK or in the US or in Australia are the Chinese that are based there. And they know the brand because they're in the UK, they're in the US, they're in Australia. Some of them are starting to spread the word to contacts in China who are then starting to purchase. It is a minor percentage. But if you don't have that brand awareness and you don't know what people are saying about you, it's very difficult to go into the market. Do you know what competitors are there? What are your competitors doing? Have you done research on their structures, on their background? You can go onto a Tmall, you can go onto the Tmall website, search for your competitors, and you can even see how many people have popped onto their shop. All that data is on there, right? Have you done a price point research? Do you know at what price point you're going to sell at? What are your competitors selling at? Right? How are you going to target your entity, your brand in China? Are you going to be high end, mid, low end? Have you thought about it? Have you done product testing? So like I said earlier, this one client that's been on my webinar series for the last few months, he's actually told me that, yeah, they did a bit of research and they realized that their packaging was just unsuitable for the Chinese market. It was not attractive for the Chinese. So they're going through a period of complete redesign, and then they're going to do another focus group testing to see whether that improves. Fantastic. He's not doing any other type of research. He's just focusing on that right now, which means that the cost is lower. You don't have to do these grand market research studies that are, I don't know, 200, 300 pages long. We need facts. We got to understand what facts we need. So I want to understand from you, if you have data points, fantastic. What are they? Make a list, a bullet point list. And then you've got to make a separate list in terms of what are you missing. So I'd like to know on the education front, you know, I want you to add the newsletters of 5 organizations or companies. In terms of the research front, right? Again, on a pen and paper, bullet points, really quick. What data points do you have today that are solid, and what data points do you need tomorrow to make any decisions and evaluate the opportunity? Okay? With understanding what specifically you need, that's so easy to go to a research company and say, look, I've got this, but I don't have this. Can you give me a proposal specifically on that? Right? It brings the price down. And everyone is concerned by price and financial resources. I get it. Okay? There's a whole bunch of ways of doing the research as well, right? What's important for you? Focus groups, interviews, observations. My husband works for a food and beverage company. I mean, wherever we go around the world, even on Saturdays when we do our food shopping, he will spend 1 hour in the candy aisle. And then, no, that's not, the example previously was not his company, but he'll be in the chocolate candy aisle and he'll spend 1 hour in there doing his own observation and checking price points of competitors and how the display is. Now, all of you can't do that on the ground, but there are companies who can do that on your behalf so that you are not lagging in time as well. You're beating out the competition by moving forward. And don't forget, the cost of a flight ticket, hotel, a week spent in China versus a company doing that type of research might be very similar. Keep that in your mind. The third superpower is literally putting pen to paper. And no, at Woodburn, we do not produce business plans. We do not produce the budget. We do not produce the game plans. That has to come from you because in theory, you should be knowing your industry, knowing your sector inside out, and with the data points, you should be able to put pen to paper, okay? What we simply do is validate this. We can validate and be your brainstorming individual that basically asks questions back and forth. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? To make sure everything is included in there. But you at some point have to put pen to paper, okay? You gotta have a game plan. I usually recommend a phased business plan, looking 5 to 10 years down the line. And with that, you also should have a budget. Okay, otherwise, how can you financially control your resources? Impossible if you don't have a budget. All right, you cannot imagine the amount of people that I have met and spoken to very recently who don't have this yet on hand, but were willing to set up an entity without it. Okay, don't set up an entity in China if you don't have this. All right, will become a disaster. So I'm not going to go through this slide, but for those of you that are stuck on how to create a business plan, I've put in here some key chapters that you should think about adding in. Okay, and under each of these key chapters, you know, there are subheadings that are involved. But I'll let you guys look at this in your own time. All right. When you're creating your business plans, your channel strategies, or your budgets, don't haphazardly throw everything together. Now, look, I'm the type of person, I'm a visual person. So for me, when I create our business plans and our budgets, well, budgets I do in Excel, but when I create the business plans, I actually do it in a PowerPoint and I do it with bullet points. Because for me, it's faster, it's easier. And with a PowerPoint, I'm able to explain it to my management. Okay, you got to figure out what is the best way for you to create a business plan, whether it's a Word document, and that's sometimes where people also get stuck on. But create a PowerPoint presentation. You've got some certain headings, fill those in, right? I always suggest doing it with a partner. So if you are in a company, have somebody within your organization act as your brainstorming partner, right? You want somebody to help you question everything that's in your business plan, because you will get questioned by your management or by investors if you want people to invest in your organization. So, you know, have somebody act as that counterpart. You know, good guy, good cop, bad guy type of relationship where you're just constantly fighting to get all the information and details into that business plan. Be conservative. So we are all enthusiastic about China. And obviously with COVID, and now it being October, it seems that China is truly open for business. Although since the October holiday, there have been some more increase in cases of COVID. So we'll see how the next month goes. But in theory, you know, everything there is back to normal. People aren't wearing masks. If you look at photos from the October holiday, people were going to touristic sites, also not wearing masks and definitely not respecting social distancing. If you talk to my team, they were at home and we're too nervous to be going outside. Everyone's a little bit different, but be conservative, okay? It's an exciting market. You can make a lot of assumptions, but the minute you have your data, that data will tell you how enthusiastic you should be or how conservative you should be. So without the data points, you know, it's very difficult to know how to create your budget. And then start early. So, you know, you should have at least 3 months on hand to create that business plan and that budget and to have that back and forth brainstorming to validate it, okay? If you have an entity in China, you follow a fiscal year of January to December. So for example, starting this month on my 2021 budget and my 2021 business plan, all right? So keep Keep those things in mind. And then monitor, evaluate, and reforecast. And obviously, I'm hoping that for everyone, 2020 was an example of that. We have all had to pivot our businesses. We've all had no choice on that, okay? I have had to change, at the beginning of the year, I was changing it every quarter, and then by June, I was changing it every single month because it was just consistently changing, all right? When you create your business plans and your budgets, you have to be prepared to constantly reforecast. And this is, again, where it becomes vital to understand that if you want to grow, you need to have management reports that are legible, that are easy to understand, and that aid you in analyzing what is happening in the current status of your business, so that you can reevaluate and reforecast for your company and keep the data and information up to date. Again, all of this, I understand. I completely understand that this one milestone might seem so overwhelming to you, but you are going into a huge market. China is not a small market, okay? It is not an easy market to maneuver. There are government regulations and complexities. We are all aware of this. The whole point of this roadmap is to show you you need to have resources available for you to do this right, okay? And the biggest question after milestone 1, if you think you've achieved it, is have you been able to evaluate that opportunity? And then how are we going to implement it? Okay, which all comes down to, how do I begin? I mean, that's honestly been the question I get a lot lately. It's people coming out of the woodwork saying, you know, we've been able to protect our home office, we've been able to protect our head office, we're doing well now, and we're ready to start again in China. But the question that I have for you, Christina, is, well, how do I begin? Where do I actually start? Okay, I've got the data points, I've got the business plan that's been already created. It's just we halted everything because of COVID. So one thing that I would tell you to do is, first of all, go back to that business plan and readjust it, because potentially since 6 months, you might have to re-update things, okay? Once you've re-updated that, then we've got to start implementing. Now, superpower number 4 is in terms of ecosystem. You need to build an empowering business ecosystem to support the development and growth of your business in China, okay? You cannot do it by yourself. You need to have individuals, a network of people that are going to help you from a variety of industries and sectors. You cannot do it all by yourself from day one. And this is why I say, if someone is referring you to somebody, don't make an assumption that they are expensive. Grab that opportunity and talk to that individual, okay? Because everybody that is doing business with China, if they've been doing it for a long time, especially the China experienced hands, like myself or like others, we're happy to share our experiences. We don't want people to suffer in China. We've gone through it ourselves. It's horrible, okay? I've honestly had nights where I didn't sleep, okay? I don't want anybody to go through that. We want to create a structure for you that is as bulletproof as possible, but you can't do it by yourself. And I'll openly say, I don't know everything, okay? China is enormous. I know a lot, and I know a lot through the 17 years that I've been there, but I certainly do not know everything, okay? And that's why I also have my own ecosystem of people that are helping me, that are educating me, that will provide me services so that I can prosper and grow myself, okay? So that ecosystem, when you start off, and I hope you guys have a pen and paper so you can make a list of this, you will need a branding organization, a marketing organization. You can't do that on your own. You need help on that initially. If you're going on the e-commerce route, because we had that topic a couple of weeks ago, you probably will need a logistics provider, a warehousing provider. You might need to have a TP, which means an e-commerce provider that helps you to set up the shops, that it helps you to evaluate what shops to be on. I just read an interesting email today with a guy who entered China on WeChat, which I think is fantastic. He did it by himself. He's got a person on the ground. He's using an incubation service to help with this person being hired. He's on WeChat. And now he's like, what's my next step? And in the email, he's saying, I think we should be on Tmall or Taobao, I'm not sure. You need to have a research done on what are the best platforms for you. That's a research exercise, okay? For his product, there might be some very specific platforms that are suitable, okay? So you've got to have that research. You've got to have these connections to people. If you are part of these associations and chambers of commerce, you're going to find a whole variety and array of service providers, everything from marketing, HR, to e-commerce providers, to accountants, to lawyers, to gosh knows, logistics providers, warehousing providers, whatever else you might need to develop that ecosystem, okay? Without that, honestly, it's very difficult to move forward. And then you'll probably have a couple of those people on your speed dial in case you get red flags, and they can help you to get out of those tricky situations. So where are you going to meet those people? Well, you're going to meet them on webinars like this. You're going to meet them, for example, on our China Roadmap community, which is our WeChat community at Woodburn, where you can meet like-minded individuals, companies that you can share ideas, get connected to, or you can meet people at trade shows, virtual trade shows, LinkedIn. I don't know if all of you know, but LinkedIn is not blocked in China, and there is a China LinkedIn where you can meet people. If you join WeChat, you can join the group chats for chambers of commerce or mini programs. Go to association or chamber networking events or virtual events. Go to directories of these chambers or these associations and ask those chambers to make introductions so that you just simply talk to people. I had a phone call yesterday with a company in Northern Ireland that's looking to set up a really quite big operation in China. And I was amazed. Why? Because they were talking to everyone. They were talking to lawyers, they were talking to auditing firms, they were talking to corporate service providers, and they were talking to industries, like people from industries, to gain their experience. So they actually had a conversation with a gentleman who has had his own company in China for the last 7 to 8 years, expanded it, and they had an hour conversation about, things like, if you would do it again, what would you do differently? Would you do it again? What were blessings in disguise, but at the time you thought it was just horrible? All of these things. They had a conversation with someone who's actually on the ground with his own company doing it. Like I said, people in China are willing to share their stories. So talk and meet people, okay? And even if you think you're being connected to somebody who right now is of no use to you, save that contact. Already start conversing with them, saying, I've got your information. I don't think, it's going to be really good or worthwhile right now to have a conversation, but, why don't we keep each other's contact information and we'll follow up in 6 months or 1 year? What's the harm in writing that? It takes 30 seconds to write an email like that, all right? Or connect with them on WeChat if you've got WeChat. Doesn't hurt. Now, the key superpower in all of this is protection, because that will give you the confidence that you're doing the right thing. And that's the whole point of this roadmap, is to know what you need to protect, okay? Now, fraud does exist in China. It probably will shock and surprise you when it comes, because it will probably happen when you least expect it and from people you never thought would do it to you, okay? You may have very high expectations in the new market, such as the language and the business culture, and then you get very disappointed when somebody does something against you, right? And it can happen from anyone, from employees, suppliers, customers, third-party agents. This is why it's very good to do your due diligence on anybody you're working with and vet them, all right? Most importantly, and it's not to scare you, or maybe it is to scare you, it will probably happen at some point in your journey that you will be caught up by fraud. I'm going to let that sink in a little bit. It's happened to me on more than one occasion, okay? But the goal is to be able to protect yourself. Now, I've created a list here of 7 things, and there are obviously more, but I could create a webinar just on this topic of how to protect yourself. The first is obviously intellectual property, trademark registrations, patent registrations, copyright registrations if you're in publishing. Then you want to have corporate governance. You want to have rules. How is this business going to work? Who is going to be the contact person to customers or suppliers? Who is going to develop those relationships? Are you going to put it in the hands of one individual or many individuals within your team? Do you want to spread out that so that you're not relying on just one person to build up this China business? And I just want to highlight here also, please do not make the assumption that fraud will come from the Chinese. Fraud can very easily happen, and it's becoming much more frequent, from Westerners. Okay? It's bad people. It can happen from Westerners and it can happen from Chinese, and I've got the case studies to prove it. Okay? So don't make the assumption that it's always going to be the Chinese that cheat you. It won't. If you hire a Westerner on the ground, trust me, they might do something wrong as well. So you've got to have corporate governance in place. Now, when people start up their businesses in China, again, whether they're transacting or whether they're actually setting up an entity, they get lazy because they say to me, Christina, we don't need to have a corporate governance plan. We've got one staff. I can manage one staff. The issue, however, comes to the point when you are focusing on acceleration and growth, and you start hiring, and you don't have a corporate governance plan in place. What do you do then? Again, it's not on your priority list, so you don't do it. And then you're subjected to fraud because you have nothing in place. Or you hire an individual, and I'm always telling everybody, when you hire an individual, yes, employment agreement is an asset. You need the employee handbook as well. So if you want to fire that individual, there better be clauses in the employee handbook that allow you to fire them. There are warning letters. There'll be a procedure inside it governing how to let somebody go. If you don't have that, because again, you don't have the financial resources to pay for it, or you're saying, I've only got one staff and we'll make it up as we go, you will never make it up as we go. Trust me, I told myself that in 2003. That is exactly a mistake that I did. I didn't have an employee handbook, and it was, by the time I had a team of 20, 25 people, it was too late to put one in. Don't get into those situations. Be thorough from the start. Due diligence procedures, when you're vetting someone, if you're hiring individuals or if you're working with partners, do your due diligence. If you're setting up an entity, where are the licenses, company chops, and bank tokens being kept? Who's maintaining those? You've got to create an operational guideline on that. You've got to have also system processes for trade transactions. So what I mean by this is, again, for those of you that are simply transacting with China, who is the contact point? Who is negotiating contracts? Who is able to amend contracts? Have you reviewed, or are there tax clauses in those contracts? Who's issuing invoices? How are those invoices being issued? Are there tax components in those invoices? Have you thought about who's liable for those tax components? Is the invoice in renminbi or in foreign currency? Can your partner in China pay for an invoice in foreign currency? You've got to know all of this up front, and you've got to create a system process so that if you do have turnover of staff, people can refer to the operational guideline and know how things work. Inventory and warehouse managing systems. Be very smart about what logistics provider you are going to utilize in China. Okay, again, I've got case studies on that where it's just gone wrong and product had to be thrown away. Okay, again, these are 7 things on how to protect yourself and your business. And again, you might find, oh my God, you're going into too much detail, Christina. I mean, creating all of these operational guidelines. You do it once, you update it every so often, and then it's done, and you give it to people to read and sign off on. But once it's done, it's done. Creating repatriation strategies, that's another one I would add on here to protect yourself, because it's a big question. Everyone asks, how do I get my money out of China? Well, let's create repatriation strategies from day one. You might not be profitable from day one, but we've got to get these agreements in place so you know how you can structure the repatriation. Right? Again, a lot of bullet points up here and action plans for you to take in terms of protecting your business. Superpower number 5 for me comes with superpower number 6. They are the 2 most vital superpowers. Superpower number 6 is you can create these system processes, but there's no point creating them if you're not implementing them. And you don't have somebody checking on them, like a compliance officer basically, or somebody coming in doing an internal health check to make sure that these system processes are running smoothly and efficiently. All right, so you've got to create these internal operational guidelines, these management directives, but you got to do health checks and internal audits to make sure that they're being implemented and being implemented correctly and being updated if they become inefficient. You've got to have appointments of directors and senior management personnel, whether that's in your home jurisdiction or in China, that support you. And they've got to be the right people. You've got to build your ecosystem of China experts. You've got to have certain people on your speed dial or on your WeChat that you know you can reach out and contact in case you see a red flag popping up, and they can help you immediately to eliminate it before it gets to the bigger mess. You've got to implement your system processes. I can't emphasize that more. You've got to create them, and then you've got to implement them. And that's how you're going to protect your business. Again, I completely agree with you. Overwhelming. I know it. It is overwhelming. But once it's done, it's done. And then it just has to be updated, and you need a compliance officer that's reviewing. So again, you got to have these resources available. Preemption by action is your best and least expensive form of protection. And I tell you that because I've had so many companies not focus on this, and then at some point along the journey have to spend an excruciating amount of money out of their budget, or take an excruciating amount of money out of their budget to fix it. And you don't want to do that when 2-3 years down the line, your focus should be on growth, okay, and on acceleration of growth. So the question then comes down to, have you been able to implement your strategy successfully in China? Okay. And if you have, then we can focus on growth. Then we can focus on accelerating your business. And the whole point of this sector is making decisions. Making decisions to pivot your company, to keep it going on the right track, or to halt it and say, we got to slow down a bit. Okay. But we need to be able to do that. And how are we going to be able to do that? We're going to do it. Again, this is part of protecting your business, and as it's also part of implementation. We have to have a sound accounting system. Without a sound accounting system, you can't get anywhere. You need a bilingual accounting system. I just got asked this yesterday, whether in China, if you install an ERP system, whether it's only in Chinese. Of course not. I mean, you can install SAP, you can install Oracle. They all have offices in China. Even the local accounting software systems or CRM systems are bilingual. You just have to make sure you click the button to make sure it's bilingual. The accounting software system we use is a cloud-based system called Megi. If you guys know Xero, it's the Xero of China. Xero cannot be compatible to China yet. So there's this system which is very similar to Xero called Megi. We use that because it's connected with the tax bureaus as well as the banks. Very easy to utilize. You know, I log in on the English section. My team logs in on the Chinese section. It all syncs, and we're all looking and reading and understanding the same thing. Another thing I want to highlight with the numbers is the following, is that most of the time, employees in China, and again, I'm generalizing, most employees in China are reactive, meaning they wait for you to tell them what to do, okay? So at some point, you've got to empower them and tell them, you've got to help me to know what to do, okay? And the biggest realization that I made in my journey was, because I sound like I'm the expert, I'm not Chinese. I'm a Westerner. I'm a white face in China. I will never know what my team and my CPAs know. I won't. They were educated there. They went to school with some of the tax officers and the people that are climbing up in the ladders at the banks, and they have that network. I won't have that network because they started that network as school children, all right? Their understanding and their experience level, never underestimate it, but you've got to find out a way of how to take it out of them. So the first thing that I did was I admitted it. I admitted it to my team. I will never know as much as you know. But because of that, I will need your help, and you need to be proactive with me instead of reactive. Which means, to start that off, what I did, and now it's become a habit, is I have weekly conversations with different teams to become updated and transparent on all information. And the whole team is updated and transparent. And then I have also calls with my management team. So you've got to create a system where you're being proactive to get the transparency that you need to look, read, and understand the Chinese financials or any other part of your business, whether it's sales, marketing, logistics, supply chain, etc. And you've got to start off being the proactive one. Okay, eventually it will become a habit. And eventually you will find that as people become loyal to your organization, they will proactively come to you with ideas. And when they do, it is phenomenal how your company will grow, especially if you take on those ideas and you're not restricted, you're not against them. You got to be open to them. So, one of the key aspects I want you to get out of this is really be proactive with the teams, and do this with your outsourced providers, right? Have these weekly calls with them. It might be mundane and silly, but a 5-minute call will get you a long way. Communication is key. All right. Now, if you have these numbers and you're able to read them, then you've also got to sit down and analyze them. So every month, what we do at Woodburn is we sit our clients down. I don't want to say we force it, we encourage it. That's probably the right word. We encourage them to sit down with us. We are proactive about it. And we say to them, we've sent you the financials. We're going to sit down now and have a conversation and read them and analyze them. And you are going to tell us now what are the next action plans? What do you want us to do, and what do you need to do? Okay. And the key is, when you're sitting down on here, if you've got your budget, you've got to take the budget and compare it to the current status so that you know the real standing of your organization. And then you can make decisions, and you can analyze the data, and you can create an action plan, right? And once you create that action plan, your focus is so clear, right? You adapt your strategy, or you stick with the strategy, you update or reforecast your budget. But ultimately, what you're doing is that with that analysis, you're making decisions. The same with your sales team. If you're sitting down with them every month and saying, I want to go through the sales figures, I want to know who the clients are, I want to know what type of negotiations are being made, that is transparency on what is actually happening on the ground. And you can do that over WeChat, Zoom, whatever else. You might need some reports being done, but it can be done. Okay? The goal at the end of the day is you've got to be able to make decisions quickly in such a fast-paced country to either say, well, we've got to pivot and change, we're going to stay on track, or we're going to stop and hold back a little bit and maybe, change a few things around. Fire people, replace people, add people, do whatever has to be done. You've got to be able to make those decisions fast. Just to give you one story that always amazed me was actually a German company. They had a production facility in Shanghai, and they grew and grew and grew. And actually, they had a couple of general managers that rotated, but eventually they had one that stuck and was with the company for about 10 years. And her feedback to me was, Christina, none of the GMs previous to me wanted to fire our finance director, who is hopeless. But now I'm at a point where this finance director has been with us since the beginning, that if I would fire her, the compensation owed to her is unaffordable for us. So I've actually got to wait till she retires to then find someone new. And on top of that, I can't hire anybody next to her, because then it will cause conflict. It'll also cause a bit of loss of face. So I'm in a position where I have a lousy finance director who's giving me no information, very difficult to make decisions, and I'm out of budget. And it was because the previous GMs never made a decision. They didn't want to rock the boat. They kind of hung on tight, and they didn't proceed. You can't do that. You got to make decisions. You have to be decisive, right? So The next theme, and next question you should be asking yourselves is, are you focusing on your strategy and your growth plan? Do you have the ability to focus on your strategy and your growth plan? So those are the 9 superpowers and the 3 milestones. So there are quite a lot of action points for you guys. So one is the education. Who are you going to subscribe to? Okay. Research. Make 2 lists. What data points do you have today? What data points do you need? Okay. That will lead you on to saying, all right, I have these data points now. I can now make a decision of what channel strategy to go on. And you might even find that the research companies that you collaborate with will actually gear their research to a conclusion for you in terms of the channel strategies. The second milestone is implementation. So again, ecosystem. I've given you a list of people you need to start connecting with and getting introduced to. Marketing agencies, branding agencies. If you're in e-commerce providers, warehouse and logistics, okay? Lawyers, accountants, auditors, HR professionals. What else am I thinking about? Oh my God, the list goes on. But let's start off with that. That's already a lot of homework. And the goal is you should be talking to 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals from each of those categories so that you have comparison. Okay. The next homework piece is protection. Trademark. Trademark registration is vital, as well as patent registrations and copyright registrations. Very, very important to do. But in terms of the protection and the system processes, think about how you're going to start off your transactions in China. Do you need contracts? Who's going to draft those contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And if you need guide on the protection and the system processes aspects, let me know. Then you want to have growth. Okay, so even if you are simply transacting with China, you want to ask your CFO in the head office to give you a P&L specifically for the China business so that you can analyze it accordingly. Okay, you want to be able to analyze figures, you want to analyze the data, and you want to be able to make decisions very, very quickly. Okay, these superpowers, it's not one-off deals. These are things that happen continuously. Research should be done continuously. Developing your network should be done continuously. Having a compliance officer to check that your company and you as a business owner are protected and the system processes are implemented and updated. You want to have these financial systems in place or reports in place that you have the ability to analyze and move forward. Okay? Again, I completely understand that everything that I've gone through today probably sounds extremely overwhelming, but this is the road path for you. Again, it's a very generalistic one that has to be tailor-made to you and your organization. Okay? But to briefly summarize, you've got to educate yourself on your business in China. You've got to have data points. If somebody wants to work with you without data points, I would vet that company. Okay? You've got to have the data points on hand. You should have another set of eyes guiding you during your startup, and that set of eyes can be anybody. So try to outsource as much as you're willing to outsource initially, so that you have that ecosystem and network so that you can then slowly build a team in-house to take that over. Create and implement internal operational guidelines and management systems, and then ultimately hire experts in your field. Okay? There are a lot of solutions in terms of how you can hire people without having an entity on the ground. But if you feel like you need feet on the ground to support your business and it's not working with outsourced providers, then hire experts. Set out a budget, understand what are the salary guidelines. Again, Google salary guideline China. You'll find a whole bunch of free reports on what are the current salary guidelines. Okay? Very easy to do. So how can we help? Well, basically, Woodburn has an advisory program which is guiding you through the roadmap methodology. And what it entails is basically 2 calls every month to create an action plan and see whether that action plan is fulfilled for the next call. And it's kind of a rolling effect thereafter. What I do is basically guide you, act as your brainstorming partner, provide cultural insights. I provide my network, connections, cultural advice, etc. The next service we provide is also the incubation service, which is where we can hire individuals under Woodburn if you want feet on the ground. And it means you don't have to set up an entity, you don't have to take that step, but you have someone on the ground that is supporting you, works for Woodburn, but is full-time working for you as the client. We offer implementation services, trademark, incorporation, ongoing corporate. We can also help you if you're simply transacting with China, review contracts. We're not a law firm, and our review would be mostly around the tax components, but we can offer that service for you. Growth services, everything from financial control and support, analysis of the current standing of the business, and suggestions on how to move forward as well is something that we do. So if you are interested in booking a strategy session, please do. Again, no strings attached to the call. It's just having a chat and talking about your business. It's never a right time. Don't feel like you have to be at a certain stage in your China journey because you don't have to be. You can just have a chat with me and talk to me and see if I can help you in any shape or form. So if you want to jot in, this is the link to my diary. Also, connect with me on WeChat. If you guys have got a WeChat account, connect with me on WeChat. If you're interested on joining the China Roadmap community, let me know and I will add you in there, okay? Join to me first and then I'll add you into the community. I'm very specific on who I add into the community, so I just want to let you guys know that. And now we're going to hit up the questions. So Gaius there's only one question from Gaius, which is how can I join your WeChat group? Gaius, there we go. Connect with me on WeChat. I'm not sure if we're already connected or not. If we are, just message me and then I will add you in. Otherwise, just add me on WeChat. Nobody else has any other questions? Very quiet group today. All right, I'll leave this open for a little while. If you do have questions, let me know. Or if you do want to have a chat and you want to let me know that, put it into the question section of the control panel and we'll organize a chat together, okay? Because I understand it might be very confidential in terms of your own situation. So Serkin is asking about, can you give more information about getting a brand or mark registered in China? Sure. So Serkin, in order to register a trademark in China, you need to, my recommendation would be to first do a search in the classes and subclasses that you want to get registered in. If you already have an existing company and you have already registered your trademark somewhere else, you can utilize that information to guide you through the China step in terms of the search. The search is advisable because it does take between 12 and 14 months to register a trademark in China. If you wait, if you don't do the search and you wait, you might find that 10 months down the line, you will get a rejection, which you don't want to get. So be aware of the importance of doing that search. And the other question you were asking is, will it be internationally valid or only domestic in China? So it will be only valid in domestic China if you do your trademark registration solely in China. You can also use the Madrid Protocol, where you can register your trademark or brand in multiple jurisdictions. But ultimately, there is no one application to have a global brand. You have to register in individual locations. The Madrid Protocol allows you to do one application in multiple countries. My advice, however, for China, I don't know about other jurisdictions, would be to register directly in China so that you have the ability to attack any hijackers or squatters on your brand name, more so than if you would have it under the Madrid Protocol. Okay, so Martin and Rod, I will contact you separately in terms of setting up a call. I'll send you an email, hopefully it'll go through, or if you connect with me on WeChat, I will set up a call as well. If anybody else has any questions, Serkan, I hope I answered your question about trademarks. If you like, I can also send you an email with more information. If you just send me an email very quickly saying trademark in the subject heading, then I'll send you greater details on that. Oh, thank you, Martin. Appreciate it. Otherwise, guys, if you do want to get updated on information, again, free information, right? It's all about superpower number one, which is education. Link to me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn because I do send a lot of information. So usually Thursdays is my day where I kind of look at all the news that's been popping up and I send out China news updates or Hong Kong news updates. I also have the WeChat community, where the China roadmap community, where I'll be doing some videos, like very short videos and presentations, and updating people on what's happening in China. You have also the webinar series that I create every month. Go to our website. I've got the first week of November and the last week of November all set up. They're really great newish type of webinars. And then obviously you can go on our mailing list as well, where we have publications that are sent out 3 times a week about a variety of different topics. So there's a lot of ways of getting free information. Don't hesitate to do that. Again, if you want to book a session, just so you guys all know, my colleague Joe is going to reach out to you guys. He's going to call you guys. It's part of his job. He'll want to have feedback on the webinar and kind of pros and cons of it, of the topic, as well as if you have any future topics that you'd be interested in. So he'll reach out to you in the coming weeks as well to get your feedback on that. And then this is the webinar that's happening from November 2nd to November 6th. Rod, because I know you, this would be a perfect webinar series for you. So you might want to join all of those, actually. Or at least sign up and then look at the recordings. But we will be talking in depth about the actual setting up of a company in China, choosing the right business activity, calculating your investment capital, choosing the right place, appointing the right people in the corporate structure, and how to open the corporate bank account where there have been new regulations placed, which are not negative, but join in if you want to listen on that. So that's woodburnglobal.com/event. In the last week of November, I'll be doing one webinar series all around tax and what you need to know about tax in China. I know, very, very, very exciting. But again, new content. So I'm really thrilled to have all of you on here. I can see slowly that people are drifting out. If you guys do have any questions, again, reach out. If you want more information about the Woodburn Advisory Program as well and putting you guys on the roadmap, let me know and I'll send you details on that too. I'm going to be hanging around for about another 5 minutes on here so that you can copy any of the details about my IDs or the links. I'll also write my email address in case people want that. And if you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's under this name, Christina Kohler-Kulic. And you can also find our company account on LinkedIn, which is Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. All right, so stay tuned for future events, and thanks a lot for joining me today. Take care and goodbye.